Hello, guys, and welcome back to Draftday 101 Podcast Talk. I'm Gerado, the moderator, and this is Draftday 101, the draft expert here. And we are going over the last 8 picks in the draft. And Draft Day, what were the previous 8 picks that we had?
We started off after Baltimore, right?
Yeah,
was it Baltimore?
We did Baltimore through Bengals.
Mm-hmm. It was Morgan Moses, Odell Beckman, Gabe Jackson, D. Ford, Timmy Jernigan, Calvin Poirier, Eric Ward, and Coney Ely.
Right. And now we know free agencies in this, and we're going to do, quick. We'll do some podcasts here and there for teams that are changing up or what we hear around the news league. But we'll probably do a podcast as close as we can before the draft and get that out. So, that's why all the reports coming in, so that way we can try to get it as accurate as we can. But as they say, picking the draft is like predicting the weather for the next week. I can't predict the future. I don't know what these teams like. I don't know who they like and all that. I just read reports and what's in the news. But in this draft day picks, we pick by what we think the team will do, not by what we think we would do if we owned the team. But anyways, now let's get to it. This is your favorite team. Draft day is the San Diego Chargers, picking here at 25.
Chargers.
So what are their 3 biggest needs here?
This is a team that I kind of follow closely. The 2 biggest needs that just stand out immediately is pass rushers and defensive backs. Sharif Wright is probably more of a nickel corner. They drafted him in the 3rd round. The intention was for him probably a nickel corner. Him starting, he can't do it again. Steven Williams was a 5th round pick a year ago. He's probably not a starter. Antoine Casey, we lost him. He wasn't a starter. Their biggest problem was probably at cornerback. And you could probably say the secondary as a whole, outside of Eric Weddle, probably could get an upgrade. Even Marcus Gilchrist. He was at times inconsistent, but he was a 2nd round pick, showed a lot of promise, and he continues to get better. The other part that was horrendous was pretty much the thing that made us a really bad 3rd round defense, was we lacked a great pass rusher. Dwight Freeney was injured most of the year. I think they're bringing him back this year. And Jared Johnson, although he's a good run stopper, he's just not a dynamic pass rusher. We were hoping a lot more from 1st round picks, Larry English and Melvin Ingram, but we haven't been able to get anything from those 2 guys as far as being a dynamic pass rusher. Ingram's given us here and there, but he's never given us that dynamic season yet. He's been here for 2 years, as well as Larry English. He's been pretty much a bust up to this point.
Right.
And we selected him, I believe, at 12th in 2009.
Yeah, right, to help out Sean Merriman at the time. And yet...
It was actually to replace Sean Merriman.
Oh, yeah.
Because Sean Merriman couldn't stay healthy.
Right, yeah. But, even...
And then a guy that might compete for one of those spots if they do not address it in the draft, a guy that might possibly compete for that spot is Torque Williams, 6th round pick. A lot of talk have been about him in his off season and how much the Chargers like him. And he was a 6th round pick, so there's not a lot invested in him. So even if you don't get him, but there's a lot of words that he really came out that the outside linebacker from Florida International drafted a year ago. He's getting a lot of buzz, but he didn't really get to play a lot last year.
Right. And y'all had some really underrated picks last year, as in Keenan Allen, Ladarius Green, proven to be valuable weapons. And I believe...
Ladarius Green wasn't last year. It was the year before.
Oh, yeah, year before, yeah. Yeah, that's true. But they have, the Chargers have seemingly to find very underrated players, or players that seem to fall in the draft, and they get them on the offensive side. But, yeah, the defensive side needs to help out. So let's get to it. Who are the Chargers picking here at 25?
At this point, the Chargers don't mind having Jason Verrett, and the consensus is that Jason Verrett, a lot of teams like him, but a lot of teams also take him off the board because he is an undersized corner. In the day of the back shoulder fade is the most popular route. They want the bigger, longer corners, and that's the concept. And everybody wants to do what Seattle did because you can't throw back shoulder fades on Seattle. They have big corners. Jason Verrett isn't that kind of a mold, but he's probably the second on everybody's board as far as just a technically sound corner, and probably can just be your traditional cornerback. San Diego's not one of those teams that value big corners over smaller corners. They value more technique, more so than size and speed. Stephen Williams and Sharif Wright aren't exactly big, fast guys, but yet they're starting corners. I think Jason Verrett would be an upgrade over both of them, and he has similar size with them. He has greater speed than them. They value that, so I would give him possibly here Jason Verrett over even a Darqueze Dennard.
All right, so there you go. Out of TCU, Jason Verrett. And now we go to 26, Cleveland Browns with the second pick. And I believe the first pick we gave them was Sammy Watkins out of Clemson.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Sammy Watkins went to...
Yes, it was.
All right. Now here they're picking at 26. We have already went over their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And now, who are they taking right here?
I would give him Derek Carr right here. I wouldn't give him. I'm going to give him David Carr here because Brian Hoyer might be the short-term solution, but long-term, Derek Carr would probably be the guy. They don't have anybody behind them. I'm looking at their depth chart. Alex Tanney. I don't really know much about him. He might be able to compete in camp, but overall, you don't have the quarterback situation in Cleveland is a disaster. I would have normally given them a quarterback earlier, but the word is that they don't really like none of the quarterbacks out there. Teddy Bridgewater, they're not really that in love with him, and Kyle Shanahan really doesn't really want him because he can't really throw on the run as well as maybe a Johnny Manziel, and I had Johnny Manziel being taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the next possible person who will maybe fit into that mold might be actually Derek Carr.
Right, and I think it's looking up on the up and coming for the Cleveland Browns with these free agency moves they just did. Of this day, they have signed Ben Tate, as everybody predicted. Ben Tate is now a Cleveland Brown fan. They have a running back. If he can maintain healthy, he can be a potential 1,000-yard back. You have already addressed a wide receiver in...
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I add something? He's coming off the same exact scheme that he played in Houston. Kyle Shanahan, before he went to Washington, he was in Houston.
Right, yeah. So it's going to be the same zone blocking scheme.
Coming off that zone stretch offense that produces 1,000-yard backs after 1,000-yard backs, and it's a great fit. Kyle Shanahan, his offense is going to be a lot of bootlegs, a lot of the same stuff that you saw in Houston and you saw in Washington.
Yeah, so, and the pieces here, Cleveland, your offense, having this mode, you got Derek Carr, we may not be as, there's a reason why he fell to 26 and he's not a definitive top 10 pick, but he's a really good player at quarterback. You have Ben Tate, potential 1,000-yard back. You have Josh Gordon, and then you have addressed Sammy Watkins as another wide receiver, and then you have Jordan Cameron. And this offensive line, we all know, is very good offensive line. And this defense was a number 6 defense overall. So Cleveland Browns, you may have something to cheer about this year for Cleveland Browns.
They have a lot of sources this year. They have money and they have draft picks. That's all you can ask for if you're trying to turn around your franchise. It's money and draft picks. They have, I believe, 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and 2 picks in the third, and 2 picks in the fourth.
And those are, you can get starters out of those. You can get camp bodies.
Out of the 4 first-rounders, you're looking for guys who are going to be contributors.
Exactly. Anybody can nail a first-round pick, but you got to nail the day 2s and the day 3 picks. That's where you really build up a team. And like both me and you said, Cleveland Browns have been looking real good right now with their offseason moves. They're not doing anything stupid. They're not letting go of any players. And
they kept Alex Mack, which I thought was a must.
Yes. And TJ Ward wanted a lot of money, so they kind of replaced him with kind of the same player with
Kind of the same player with Dante Whitner.
and took less money. That was a smart move by them. And the same thing with
He's a little bit older. So you don't get the same exact investment, but it's not like he's 35 years old. He's only 29 years old. But.
And then Carlos Dansby has seemingly with the stats has gotten better with age almost since his days in Arizona, then in Miami, then back in Arizona. Now he's at Cleveland, and after losing DeQuell Jackson, I was thinking there is a hole at Mike linebacker, but they fill it with Carlos Dansby.
And I like that because even if DeQuell Jackson had came back to Cleveland, he necessarily isn't a best fit for
3-4 defense.
3-4 defense. I mean, he went to Indianapolis and they run a 3-4 too, but I thought of him he was a lot better the year before when he was playing in a 4-3.
Right, and Carlos Dansby has played.
It's not that he can't play a 3-4. He's just better in a 4. I mean, he's just better in a 4-3.
Right.
Carlos Dansby, he's a better at the 3-4 more so than a 4-3.
Right, and so Cleveland Browns you may not be picking in the top 10 next year, but you guys have something to look for. Now we go down south to the New Orleans Saints, and what are their 3 biggest needs this year?
The New Orleans Saints, I think that they could still address that left tackle position a little bit. Tyron Armstead was up and down, especially if you go and look at that Carolina game where he was getting humiliated. And they could need help at that spot. And they also could address the linebacker position. It's also definitely a need at this point. And you could possibly address a cornerback opposite Keenan Lewis.
Right.
Kenny Lewis.
Yeah, because they have, I believe, Greer is not on the team anymore. Neither is.
They lost Porter. They've lost corners over the years. Corey White, he was up and down. You possibly can get better than him. And they already added Jarius Byrd to the secondary. So the back end is with Rob Ryan. You're asked to cover a lot, man to man, do a lot of exotic things. You're put out on the island. If you can't cover in Rob Ryan's defense, you're going to get exposed.
Big time. Ask the Cowboys of 2 years ago. It was horrible. But then they got worse this year. But
I don't think it was Rob Ryan that was the problem in Dallas. We've come to figure that out.
Right. There's a lot of problems there in Dallas. But let's get back to the Saints. Who do you have them taking here for the Saints?
I have them taking here a big physical corner in Darkfield Quest Denard.
From Michigan State, number 31.
Michigan State. He's a big physical corner. He fits the mold. He plays the same style as Keenan Lewis. So you have mirrors on the opposite end. So you can line one up at left. You can line one up at right. Line one up against there because they're almost like a very identical type of corner. They're going to jam you at the line of scrimmage, and they're going to play man-to-man. Darqueze Dennard doesn't fit every single defense. He's more of that press, cover, corner, more so than playing off man or soft or a Tampa 2. He's more designed for this aggressive type of a defense where he's going to bump you and get physical at the line of scrimmage, rather so than just using technique or feet work or just discipline. It's man on man, and that's what he does best, and this is what the fit would be.
Yep, and I think it'd be a great fit for them, and I think their defensive back group, they need, when you're playing in the NFC South, you kind of need a defensive back group going against, Matt Ryan and against the Atlanta Falcons. But we go to the team that's won the division, but both me and you talked about how this team's offseason has been the worst this offseason in the Carolina Panthers. And if you guys have looked up the Carolina Panthers roster, I believe their 5th string and 6th string wide receivers are the only 2 wide receivers on the team. Now,
guys, none of these guys have really gotten big time experience, but they did just recently sign recently signed Jericho Cotchery, which I don't think is a solution at all at wide receiver. That's the biggest hole. They have to get Cam Newton weapon. I didn't think necessarily because Mike Shula is the offense is designed to really have two tight ends. They never addressed it, so they had to pick up Mike Tolbert and maybe as a fullback. But traditionally, Mike Shula didn't want to really play with. He doesn't really like to play with fullback. He likes to play with two tight ends. They still need tight end outside of Greg Olsen. They have need at both wide receivers. In fact, they need help at 4 different wide receivers. I don't think that. I think Jericho Crotcher is maybe a 4th or 5th wide receiver on a regular team. The guys I'm looking at on the roster right now: Traveris King, Jericho Crotcher, Marvin McNutt, R.J. Webb. These aren't household names. These aren't guys who've made plays. Cam Newton's got to be like, are you guys trying to sabotage me here?
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
And it's weird because Cam Newton's progressively getting better and better through the years.
And yet, I thought even in his first year they could have addressed the wide receiver. Steve Smith wasn't the youngest guy coming in. We eventually knew Steve Smith was going to, at the time in Carolina, the time is ticking, you know?
Right.
We knew because he's not a young guy, but at the same time, you never addressed it. And then the guy that you kind of patchworked and kind of fixed it with Ted Ginn, you let him walk out the door the same offseason. You let Brandon LaFell, who was coming on at times, he had a little bit of rapport with Cam Newton. You let him go. And then Dixon.
Yeah. Hickson. Yeah, Dixon, yeah.
Hickson, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Dominique Hickson, yeah, he needs to play for the Giants,
Hickson, he was at times a Cam Newton kind of guy. They let him go. At a point, Cam Newton's got to be sitting there like, okay, what are you guys trying to do here? Because I would have liked them to keep at least one of those veterans, even if they wanted to draft a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. They could help out Cam Newton, you know, by giving him instruction. Maybe even if you couldn't keep Steve Smith, even if you were going to cut Steve Smith, maybe keep a Ted Ginn there, maybe a Brandon LaFell. Those guys have played with this guy. Maybe those guys can help the younger guy get better and mature. Because wide receivers like to watch veteran wide receivers. Young wide receivers get better by watching older wide receivers, even guys who are less talented than them.
Yes, and so let's get to it. The Carolina Panthers select what wide receiver?
Right here, I'm actually going to give him. I'm going to give him Marquise Lee, the wide receiver. I mean, Brandon Cooks. I'm sorry, Brandon Cooks
from Oregon State, right? And he was
Oregon State because he kind of actually fits kind of what Steve Smith brought to the table. He's very similar. He's a little bit undersized, but he's definitely a deep threat, and I really could see him having a rapport with Cam Newton. But the only difference that I would probably say the biggest difference between a Brandon Cooks and a Steve Smith's game is physical. Brandon Cook's game is kind of finesse. There's nothing wrong with finesse, but his game is more finesse. You know, he's going to use his outside leverage. He's going to use this. He's not going to be always aggressive with you. He doesn't always block, and he doesn't like going over the middle and taking big time hits.
Right.
Steve Smith, he thrives when he gets hit. I think that guy goes psycho when he gets hit. Brandon Cooks doesn't like that, but there's similar traits there. They're yards after catch guys. They're undersized guys, and they both play with a chip on their shoulder.
Right. And the catchphrase of Steve Smith is "Ice up, son." And let me tell you this: Cam Newton's gonna be icing up a whole lot if they don't get him some receivers, because he can't do everything by himself.
Yeah, even help at offensive line. We even neglected to even talk about the help at secondary that they've had. I was so busy talking about wide receivers and how big that need is. How about corner? DeAndre Presley and Melvin White aren't exactly guys that you go out and you bang your chest. Even the year before, everybody was like 49ers. I remember Michael Crabtree is saying, like, they have no corners. How do you think they're going to possibly stop me?
Exactly. And then Captain Munnerlyn, the big name, is gone.
He left. The only guy who actually could cover.
And then Mike Mitchell, their safety, is gone too.
Lost him, but they're going to put in a lot of investment undrafted free agent from a year ago, Robert Lester.
Right, yeah. But that and then Jordan Gross retired, their best offensive
Their left
line.
tackle.
Yeah,
But Nate Chandler, they've had a horrendous offseason this year. They're going to have to start Nate Chandler. He was also an undrafted free agent.
and
They were talking about possibly playing defensive tackle a year ago.
exactly, and
So you're going to have him at left tackle. I mean, if I'm sitting there, Cameron, I'm like, they're sabotaging me.
this team. Yes, this team.
They think me and Luke Kuechly are going to magically just take this team into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like listen, I know Carolina's front seven is mean, but listen, if you don't got people who can cover, then I don't know what to tell you.
It's hard. I mean, you can only disguise so much, and the front seven can win you games for only so much. This division is talented. Atlanta is not going to be the same Atlanta we saw a year ago. I can't believe that they would with a healthy Julio Jones.
Right? Yeah.
Or they're always a formidable foe. They split games with them a year ago. They both won at home. And in Tampa Bay, you got to believe that I like what Lovie Smith has been doing this offseason. He's adding password. He's adding weapons. His quarterbacks maybe even upgraded.
Right.
If you want to win this division, you got Carolina. You got to start stepping it up.
And like me and you have already addressed this with Tampa Bay, I believe. There's never been a back-to-back winner in this division since the existence of this division. And Carolina, you're looking like you're about to be the worst team in this division so far in off-season moves. To be honest, from what I've seen, from players leaving to not
I wouldn't go as far as worst, but as maybe a second to last. I don't mean cutting you off, but I mean maybe Tampa Bay. I'm not that confident in Josh McCown, but I think he's an upgrade at this point than Mike Glennon, but by that, not by that much though.
Yeah, I'm still. I mean, yeah.
But
I understand.
Tampa Bay's more talented than Carolina right now.
Yeah,
I would say, yeah.
But like we said, this division it can go either way. We don't know. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers may win this division next year. It's that sporadic. We don't know what can happen.
This division has never proven ever to be consistent.
Right. But we go head up north, a little bit up north from Carolina, and we go to the New England Patriots here. Now, they probably boasted up their secondary quite a bit since we last talked. They have Darrelle Revis now, and Brandon Browner has also signed a 4-year deal with them. So, now they have Brandon Browner and Darrelle Revis.
Going to be playing, but
yeah.
They'll be Alfonso Denard could hold his own for those few games.
Right.
I'm hoping it as well, too.
So, let's get to it. The Patriots, what are their 3 biggest needs this offseason? I mean, coming into the draft.
Defensive tackle is a need. I'm looking at the depth chart right now. Tommy Kelly, and Armand Armstead, the defensive tackle, former USC guy, Canadian Football League guy. He's up. He's been up and down. His hype was a little bit more than what he gave back. Chris Jones from Bowling Green, the guy I like, but I think of him more as a future rotational guy. He's probably still a year away from being even a rotational guy if you want to bring him in that situation. You could also help out at pass rushers. Rob Ninkovich didn't always play as consistent as he has in the past, and he kind of fits a little bit more of a 3-4 more so than a 4-3, but it looks like the Patriots are now convinced that they're going to play with 4-3, an even front. Even though that they do still have guys standing up from time to time, but overall it's pretty much now a 4-3. And you could also help out there at wide receiver. I mean, you can't give Tom Brady enough weapons. I mean, they added Brandon LaFell, but wide receiver is one. But the Patriots tend not to draft wide receivers in the first 2 rounds, though.
Right.
That's tendencies.
Now, who do you have them here taking at 29?
They'd be probably ecstatic to see this guy, but I would give him Lewis Nix to replace Vincent Wilfork.
That would be a big time. I think they would take probably less than a minute to pick if he's still there.
The other guy I was thinking was Rashad Hickman, but I would have normally thought, but Lewis Nix has been kind of falling off the radar. He was hurt.
And
I have him still. I'm still one of the rare guys. I don't see a lot of people, other people who are. But in the preseason, everybody had Lewis Nix in their top 10. Why don't they have him now? Because he got hurt in that second half. He's gonna be back. It's not an injury where it's gonna linger for the rest of his career. I'm hoping not. But based on that, he has a future as the ultimate run stopper.
right, he's a big
Notre Dame a year ago in 2012, no one could score touchdowns on him in the goal line.
yeah. They were
And the main reason, Lewis Nix.
weren't they like they had like the longest streak ever to have not a rushing touchdown on them before Alabama dismantled that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty good run stopper.
Remember that goal line stand against USC. Remember that
Exactly.
goal line stand against Stanford. Those goal line stands weren't Manti Te'o as much as the media hyped up Manti Te'o. Those were Lewis Nix, and Lewis Nix dominated like offensive linemen. Like he'd take 2 or 3 guys and just and take up the space. I think that he could play either a 3-4 or a 4-3, and which Bill Belichick's not afraid to go to either. He's shown that he doesn't mind going and playing an even front or odd front. He's willing to go to whichever one he feels his best his personnel is. Lewis Nix, I don't think his best fit is an even front, but he still could play it. He could play that one gap right over between the guard and the tackle and dominate from there.
Right. I think it'd be a great fit for New England after they have cut Vincent Wilfork, they pretty much get a smaller version of him, a younger version of him in Lewis Nix. Now we go to by the Bay and San Francisco picking here at 30, and what are their 3 biggest needs?
San Francisco, they're going to have to address the cornerback position. That's definitely the number one thing. They went and signed Antoine Bethea, so that's definitely an upgrade. But Chris Culliver, up and down, I'm not that sold on him. I actually think Tremaine Brock is actually better suited to start opposite to possibly any other corner that they might select.
Yeah, Tremaine
They
Brock.
also need help in the defensive line as well too, because Justin Smith. I keep saying this every year, but he just keeps proving me wrong. But he's getting up there. When is he gonna start regressing? When is his age gonna start showing? He's 34 years old now. He's not a spring chicken anymore. I've been saying this for the last couple of years, but he's kept proving me wrong. So the 49ers have been able to pass over and overlook that position. But they have young guys coming in like Tank Carradine to possibly replace him. Glenn Dorsey, he adds depth. Who could play either that 5 technique or possibly nose tackle. And then another position is the nose tackle position that he possibly can address as well too.
Right. So who do you have them taking here at 30?
At 30 here, I have them taking Kyle Fuller, the cornerback out of Virginia Tech.
Now, I've heard that you like him a lot. Now, so
yeah, that's one. If I had to say a prospect guy like that I fell in love with just watching tape, it's probably him. I love his game. He's technically sound. He is the technician out of the group. If you want to go watch a cornerback and see how a cornerback is supposed to cover, it's Kyle Fuller. I'm not worried about him down the line 6, 7, 8 years, maybe when he loses a little bit of speed, because his game isn't reliant on speed and athleticism. It's about technique, fundamentals. He always knows where to be, and he's not afraid to put his nose there and tackle. That fits a 49er to me. I don't know how you could fit a 49er more so than hard-nosed, tough kind of guy like a Patrick Willis and a Navarro Bowman. Now you add him, you have the best tackling team possibly in the NFL.
Right. Now let's go down to Denver, and they're the Super Bowl losers. I'm sorry, Denver. I call it how I see it. And what are their 3 biggest needs? And yet they have had kind of a successful offseason. I've also asked you
They're going all in.
They're going all in. I've also, this is another discussion outside of draft was, everybody's saying John Elway's looking real smart. Listen, I could win a Super Bowl. I could get to the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning and what he has. It's not hard. I never seen an offensive coordinator coordinate Peyton Manning. He is the head coach. Not
He's always been the offensive coordinator.
Exactly. Like if I had Peyton Manning on my team, I'll win 10 games
the offensive coordinator still does a job. He has some game plan, but Peyton Manning is still the offensive coordinator when it comes to play calling and doing those duties.
Right. And the Denver Broncos, listen, they're saying, John Elway is being a smart guy. Listen, John Elway is getting a whole bunch of big names. If he doesn't win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, something's wrong. Something's not executing right. He's gotten DeMarcus Ware. He's gotten Aqib Talib, and he just also had T.J. Ward from the Browns. Now, these are all big name guys. They were all rated in the top 15 players of free.
He gets Von Miller back.
Yeah, exactly.
All forgetting that he gets also Von Miller back.
Right. So, this team, these teams, they're already looking to be favorites.
Also signed Emmanuel Sanders to replace Eric Decker, too. That's one maybe you forgot about, too.
Yeah. And Peyton Manning's always going to make his receivers look good, no matter what. And so, right now, 31, who are the Broncos? What are their biggest needs?
Broncos have very few needs. Obviously, they made it to the Super Bowl, but they have need an inside linebacker, and they need to have a cornerback. I have this guy kind of falling already at this point. His name hasn't been mentioned, but if this guy really falls to this spot, Denver Broncos fans, you got to be ecstatic because you added yourself C.J. Mosley in the draft, but their need is definitely at corner a little bit more so than even inside linebacker because you can find inside linebackers that are laid around. But I have them taking C.J. Mosley here.
Right, and C.J. Mosley has been falling, and there has been rumors he may go even day 2 in the draft. I doubt a team is any of these the bottom 4 teams, would pass up on C.J. Mosley because he's a tremendous athlete. How good he's been at Alabama, even as a freshman there, when the likes of Dante Hightower and Nico Johnson were in front of him, and he's just
he was still showing a lot of promise. Nico Johnson wasn't the guy who was the leading tackler a year ago. It was C.J. Mosley.
Right. Yeah. And so I think I think they're probably also ecstatic the fact that C.J. Mosley fell to them at 31.
Yeah. Inside linebackers, I kind of told people that there was a chance that C.J. Mosley, like I used to see like a lot of mock drafts having C.J. Mosley at the top 7 pick. I'm like, it's unlikely that an inside linebacker or a traditional linebacker that doesn't rush the passer. We're not talking about the Von Millers or the Matt Khalils or Khalil Mack or Anthony Barr types. Or we're talking about just your traditional cover linebacker, the Derek Brooks, the Ray Lewis types. Those guys who just play linebacker traditionally on an an odd front or even front.
And put it this way,
they tend to fall. If you haven't noticed, like guys like even James Laurinaitis, as productive in how good he was, he fell to the second round. Ray Maluga, he fell to the second round. Guys tend not to go as high. Even like guys like Aaron Curry, he went early in the first round. Teams are realizing it's not even worth picking a guy, a linebacker, a traditional linebacker, early on.
And we even saw it was it 2 years ago? Luke Kuechly, he didn't even go in top 7, right? He went to what?
And Luke Kuechly was a top 5 player, but it was kind of hesitant. But Luke Kuechly's just special. Yeah. Dante Hightower and Luke Kuechly, they were really, really good prospects.
Right.
Those are more of the exception, more so than rule. C.J. Mosley isn't special.
Right.
He's solid in linebacker, and I think his best position might even be at will linebacker.
Right.
In 4-3. He played a 3-4 inside linebacker, but I didn't think that was his best position because he can't take on blocks. But when he's freed up and he's playing in space and there's a big old nose tackle in front of him and he can make all the plays and make all the adjustments, C.J. Mosley is an awesome inside linebacker. Just not when he has to take on blocks. I would love to see him play as a will linebacker, but if Denver was to draft him, he'd probably play middle linebacker because that's Danny Trevathan and Von Miller better outside linebackers than C.J. Mosley.
Right. Now we go to the Super Bowl champs and the Seattle Seahawks. And Pete Carroll, every year, he likes to surprise us. Even though me and you know him, not personally, but seen him a lot at USC, he is still a very unpredictable coach. He is. We have seen him start walk-ons over 5-star recruits. We have seen him start seventh rounders over first overall picks. It's happened. Well, right here.
Yeah, he's always switching his roster. He's not afraid of their. I've never had a Seahawks guy like in the first round ever. I don't think I've ever mocked the Seattle Seahawks right besides Russell Okung, and that was kind of a given. But outside of Russell Okung, I've never had any of the Seahawks picks right because the Seahawks have always done things that I don't want them to do. Like a few years back, they drafted Bruce Irvin. I was like, what are they doing here? A few years back before then, they drafted James Carpenter. I didn't even think James Carpenter was a third rounder. I had him as a 4th round pick. But James Carpenter,
Carpenter,
he's become a really good guard.
Exactly.
He's played his role. He hasn't become some superstar, but he plays his role in this defense, and he gets after the quarterback on third downs.
Right, and
Earl Thomas. I kind of doubted why he would draft a safety that he doesn't know rather than the safety he knows in Taylor Mays. Earl Thomas, best free safety in the NFL.
Exactly.
He brings in Brandon Browner. Brandon Browner's not on the team anymore, but I'm just using this as an example. He brings in Brandon Browner. I'm like, you're sitting here starting a 6'4" Canadian football cornerback. What are you doing, Pete Carroll? And guess what? Brandon Browner becomes a really good corner. He drafts Richard Sherman in the 5th round. Russell Wilson, he starts him over a highly paid Matt Flynn. Pete Carroll does some unconventional thinking. So picking his pick is probably the hardest one to pick it. So I'm going to go with somebody that I would think outside of the box. And I'm gonna go here with Jace Amaro.
Jace Amaro
from Texas Tech.
Right. And he's the second tight end taken.
Second tight end taken here.
Yeah.
It's unconventional thinking. It's a little bit of a need, but it's not that big of a need. Because Anthony McCoy, he's a pretty decent number 2, and Zach Miller, he's okay. He also could be a number 2, but Zach Miller, you could upgrade from him.
And then who's the other? Then they draft that other dude, the second stringer.
Wilson in the 5th round. But Seattle's not afraid to put competition. Pete Carroll has never been afraid of having competition and seeing which one is going to weed out the weak one.
Exactly. Pete Carroll doesn't follow conventional football,
Yeah, he's never followed anything that I've ever thought. Heck, he turned J.R. Sweezy, the offensive guard. He was a defensive tackle. He selects him, and he ends up moving him from defensive tackle to offensive guard, a position he's never even played.
Exactly. And, Pete Carroll just does this.
He starts him his rookie year.
Yep. Pete Carroll listen, you're a first rounder, he don't care. To him, you're all drafted within the same year. Y'all all got picked in the same round to him. If you're better than somebody, there you go, you're going to start. And that's one thing we always loved about Pete Carroll is he's always going to put the best player on the field.
Yeah, he doesn't, it seems as if he doesn't really care for how much money the front office spent on you or what round you were picked.
Yeah.
He's going to play who he thinks is going to help him win.
Yeah, he's
going to be pressured by anybody.
Exactly.
And he also added in Jared Allen this year, so that was one of the surprises, too, for me of the offseason period.
Right, that Jared Allen, he's going to Seattle Seahawks, and they replaced Chris Clemens with Jared Allen, and I think that's a big time, a bit of an upgrade for me. I think so. They keep...
You have also Cliff Edwards. You still have him. They re-signed Michael Bennett.
Michael Bennett stays at home. He takes a discount to stay at home because he knows what Pete Carroll's doing there other than taking big-time bucks at a different place.
And then Mebane is still up there. They lost their other.
They lost Red Bryant. They lost
Bryant, but Jordan Hill's probably going to be filling in that spot. And he really liked Jordan Hill a year ago. He was a third rounder.
Right, and I've
This
also
third rounder for Penn State. But I always say this: beware of Penn State defensive linemen. They tend to disappoint.
Aaron Maben, big time. I saw.
Courtney Brown.
Yep.
The list can go on and on. But that's pretty much it for the
First round.
draft.
Yeah, that's all 32 teams. Now, I'm asking, there is some players that, are first round talent that weren't drafted. We have our
Just every year.
Yeah, there's always going to be somebody who falls. It happens every year. Somebody's going to fall and the team's going to pick him up. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder, play with a chip on his shoulder, or maybe he just lives up to what people thought he was. Maybe he isn't as good as we thought he was. And I'm going to name a list of players that weren't drafted in the first round. We have Marquise Lee at wide receiver for USC. We have also another, I'm trying to go over, Kevin Benjamin from Florida State was not drafted. We have, I believe, you didn't have D4 drafted, the DN from Auburn?
Mm-hmm.
All right, there's him. And
D4, I believe I did have him drafted.
Did he go
I had him
to the Cardinals?
Arizona.
All right, then Rashid Hageman was not selected then,
Mm-hmm.
right? No, he was not. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any other players that you see that probably would sneak into the first? I mean, that are good value picks.
Sneaking in the first round. You pretty much named all the key guys that I thought you would pretty much name.
Right. And so, who do you think there's gonna? And then there's always a guy who jumps. Now it may be the Seahawks pick because they conventionally like to pick up a third round dude.
Terrence Brooks as well from Florida State. He's really been moving up boards.
And
There's a possibility he ends up becoming a first round pick.
The safety from Florida State, number 31, right? So do you have any other players, or you think that's just gonna be? You think anybody else is gonna?
Bradley Roby, possibly. I'm not high on Bradley Roby. I'm not a Bradley Roby guy, but a lot of people like his athleticism. They like his speed, but I'd say you can't teach a blind dog how to read. I don't know. He has poor vision.
He's as you say, he's blind as a bat. Probably, yep. And so that's about does it for our first round mock draft. Now we're not gonna go into deep. We can't do all 7 rounds. That's just gonna take forever. There's websites out there that don't even have anything past the second round, and but we'll probably talk about some high value picks. We'll talk about if anything big happens in the NFL free agency or any big trades happen. We'll probably do a quick podcast and go over it and what we think. And we'll probably do a draft as close as we can to the NFL actual draft and try to get as accurate as we can and see how close we get. Maybe me and Draftday have a contest and see who gets the most picks right. And I probably will get about 3 right. I think 3. I've
had worse. I've had a year where I only had 2 right.
There we go. I'm gonna go with 3. My over and under is 3, and I'm gonna go with that. I'm going with 3 this year. But until next time, we'll see you then, and don't worry, guys. This mock draft was solely based on what we think teams are gonna do and what we have seen so far. Pro days.
Free agents who didn't also sign before we made this mock draft, but we were kind of doing it during free agency, so some of these picks might be changed in possibly just the up and coming weeks.
Right, and teams all of a sudden get enthusiastic about a certain player, and they're all of a sudden really high on him coming into the draft, or all of a sudden a player just completely falls out the first round, and it always happens every year, guys. So we'll be looking forward because there's always drama on draft day. You can always guarantee that. That's the number. That's all I always say. There's always going to be drama on draft day. So until next podcast, we'll see y'all then.